So why has this happened to Cumbria? In particular to the district of Allerdale, where 62% of the county's onshore wind turbines are located, with the other districts sharing 38% between them. Well, one reason is that much of the population is rural and quite spread out, and so it can be very difficult to mount a strong opposition to what is perceived to be an inappropriate and damaging application. Undoubtedly, the generous subsidies offered by the government have also played a major part in what has happened. It has been like bees around a honey pot, with developers, big and small, all wanting their share. Other forms of renewable energy production just aren't encouraged in the same way. When it was pointed out to one local landowner who had applied for a wind turbine that he had a barn on his property with the perfect orientation for solar panels, the response was that he'd never thought of this and that his agent was only promoting wind turbines. Subsidies are also the reason for the cynical practice of applying to run a derated turbine. In order to encourage smaller developments, the government offers a higher feed-in tariff for turbines with an output of 500 kilowatts or less. We have seen a great many applications for turbines which have an output of 800 or 900 kilowatts, but the applicants or agents usually propose to throttle them back to 500 kilowatts in order to take advantage of the higher feed-in tariff. It is difficult to see how even the most passionate supporter of wind energy could approve of this type of application when a turbine is being deliberately prevented from making its full contribution to green energy simply in order to line the pockets of its owner. It is, of course, the energy consumers who ultimately foot the bill for these green subsidies. Derating wind turbines is a loophole which the Department for Energy and Climate Change has recognised and says it is working to try and close. This was confirmed recently in response to a question from Sir Tony Cunningham MP, whose constituency includes much of Allerdale. Sir Tony is fully supportive of offshore wind, and let's not forget that Cumbria has made a big contribution to this as well, with the gigantic Robin Rig array in the Solway Firth. Do you think Allerdale has made a large contribution to renewable energy targets?
Far too much. I think there's a very clear message from the people of Allerdale, and that message is enough is enough. We've got far more than our fair share of wind turbines. They're now a nuisance, a hindrance, they're a blot on the landscape, and we should make the point, as I've said, very, very clearly. We've got more than enough. Now is the time to stop.
Do you think wind turbines are expensive to the energy consumer?
Is it costing us a lot of money?
It is. It's very expensive. There's a great difference between offshore and onshore. I was a supporter of the offshore wind turbines, but they generate huge amounts of money. As I've said on many occasions, to stick 1 or 2 wind farms in a field that don't generate enough electricity to boil a kettle is just ridiculous.
The situation has also not been helped by the fact that at the time of making this film, and for a number of years leading up to this point, Allerdale Borough Council has had a local development plan in place which is silent on the subject of renewable energy. The council does not seem to want to face up to the fact that this has contributed to the wave of wind turbine applications which has engulfed us. Although an inquiry was conducted in 2013 which recognised that Allerdale contains 62% of Cumbria's onshore wind turbines, it was not accepted that the lack of a local plan had anything to do with this. It is not unusual for developers to admit that they choose Allerdale because they are aware of this void in local planning. The lack of renewable energy policies is something which is often referred to in wind energy applications. Many residents whose lives have been blighted by wind turbines do not feel that Allerdale Borough Council has exercised due diligence in resisting inappropriate developments and in enforcing conditions which are attached to planning permissions for the purpose of protecting the public.
So the local planning authority handled the situation. Do you think they did enough to protect the local residents?
No, categorically not.
Have
I mean, they did refuse the application in the first place, but quite honestly, their representations of the planning appeal were pathetic.
When the local council does refuse a wind energy application, the applicant or agent has the option to appeal the decision. The Planning Inspectorate is based in Bristol, and appeals, whether they are carried out in the form of written representations or a public inquiry, are conducted by a planning inspector who isn't local to the area. We've recently had an instance of a planning inspector who, within the space of 1 week, granted permission for 3 single wind turbine developments, all within a square kilometre of one another. 2 of these turbines will be 67 metres in height, and 1 45 metres. Local residents are devastated. None of these decisions makes any reference to the fact that the inspector was determining other appeals at the same time. The cumulative impact that the 3 turbines will have with each other, as well as with other wind energy developments, will be immense. Despite planning guidance issued by the Department for Communities and Local Government as recently as July 2013, which clearly states that the views of the community should be listened to, many residents of Cumbria do not feel that all planning inspectors necessarily understand all of the local issues.
Planning application to appeal, you're almost moving into a different format, and we then had somebody from Bristol to come and have a look at the planning application, how the planning application was conducted, and to make a decision about our environment by spending 2 or 3 days here in this place.
You don't feel that the inspector had a good feel for what it's like in this area?
Not at all. No. Not at all.
No.
One planning inspector, David Lavender, devised a test against which the level of damage to residential amenity caused by wind turbines can be measured.
Yeah, the Lavender test was something that was devised by a planning inspector, David Lavender, at the Ennifer Downs application down in Devon. And he had to say about turbines that when they're present in such a number and size and proximity, they represent an unpleasantly overwhelming and unavoidable presence in main views from a house or garden. There's every likelihood that the property concerned would come to be widely regarded as an unattractive and thus unsatisfactory place in which to live. It is not in the public interest to create such living conditions where they did not exist before.
I don't think there can be any question that they are a dominant presence.
Well, yeah, I mean, we made this point to the inspector at the time of the appeal, George Baird. We made the point in writing, we made it verbally at the appeal, and he actually came and stood in this room and he could see what was going to happen to them, but it didn't really make any difference. It appears to me that the planning inspectorate is completely biased towards turbines, and he approved the turbines here, as well as the turbines at Talentire, which appeals he held back to back with the appeal here.
2 local estate agents have independently arrived at the conclusion that a house within 1 kilometre of a large wind turbine stands to lose 33% of its market value. Beyond 1 kilometre, the loss in value might range between 20 to 25%. At present, the government does not acknowledge that wind turbines have any effect at all on the value of property. Therefore, this cannot be used as an argument in planning objections, despite the fact that the purchase of a house is the biggest investment that most people make in their lives. The fact that the Valuations Office agency has now begun to offer reduced rateable values on properties which are close to wind farms does, however, suggest that recognition may be starting to dawn.
There is a problem of property valuation. We don't want to see our property devalued, and it's already in the area a number of properties are up for sale, and people are having difficulty with potential buyers when they know that there are turbines in the area, likely to be in the area. Then they just walk away from a potential purchase. So it is a real concern to us, both from a quality of life perspective and from the potential impact on our property valuation.
This is the application site for Carwath wind farm. 3 gigantic turbines which would completely dominate the serene rural landscape. Another monstrous development to add to the others already located in Allerdale. Each turbine would be 377 feet tall, 207 feet higher than Nelson's Column. The application is likely to come before Allerdale Borough Council's Planning Committee within the next few months. Many people living in West Cumbria at the present time will probably not agree with me when I say that wind energy is not all bad. I believe it probably does have a place amongst the mix of technologies which can take us into the future. But it has gone wrong here. The subsidies have caused a gold rush in Cumbria, and we've ended up with far too many turbines, most of them far too big and in the wrong places. They are causing misery and distress to hundreds of people. Whilst it may not be all bad, wind energy is certainly not all good. I hope this film has explained some of the problems it generates. More problems than electricity in most cases, as the average output of a wind turbine is usually no more than about 25% of its capacity. One common misconception is that by putting up more and more wind turbines, we will be able to close down conventional power stations. But let's think about that for a moment. It isn't true unless we are going to accept that there will be no power at all when the wind isn't blowing. Conventional power stations will need to be kept running on spinning standby to kick in when there is no wind. They can't just be flicked on and off as and when they are needed. Running power stations on spinning standby is the most wasteful use of coal, gas and oil imaginable. This must be added to the massive carbon footprint that is taken up by wind turbines themselves in their manufacture, transport and in their concrete foundations. In the meantime, we are sacrificing a huge amount to the turbines in terms of unspoilt and cherished landscapes. Rather than looking for a brownfield site, it is so much easier to put a turbine in the countryside, where the property owner, with an eye on the subsidies, makes the land freely available. One developer stated in a recent application that his turbine would give local people the opportunity to reflect on the positives of renewable energy. The reality in Cumbria is that if anyone wants to marvel at a wind turbine, there are literally hundreds to choose from. West Cumbria is still the gateway to the Lake District and beautiful in its own right, but that beauty is being obscured. The motto of Allerdale Borough Council is Allerdale, a great place to live, work and visit. It is true, but the question is for how much longer? My suggestion is that if you want to visit this special place, do it very soon. Since this film was made, Allerdale Borough Council has adopted a new local plan, which does contain some measures against inappropriate wind energy development. We hope it will be helpful in the future. There are many living in the area who wish this policy had existed before. The turbine applied for at Ainstable has been refused by Eden District Council. Residents now wait to see if there will be an appeal. I'll leave the final words to John.
Back in the early days of wind turbines, you actually looked into getting some of your own, didn't you?
I did. Well, when they were first talked about and generating energy, I thought, what a wonderful idea. Free energy, clean energy. I did ask, this is actually the company that first set off with these. And they came out and said I had a suitable site for a single turbine, but when I realised how big and what scale they were actually on, I decided against going ahead.
This is the reality of living near wind turbines.
This is the reality, yeah.
Thank you.